Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Guy on the Internet Talks About Movies. This is that guy coming back at you with another box office breakdown. It's been about a month since the last time I did one of these, and I was really just waiting for a headline that was so attention grabbing that I just had to talk about it. And there are quite a few of those headlines this week as I'm looking at the box office reports, so let's go ahead and get into it. I want to go ahead and layer this by good, bad, and good, and I guess the term good is kind of loose here because the first thing I have to talk about are a couple of the new releases that came out this week. As some of you may know, we got three very different new releases this week. In The Bad Guys, more of an animated kids movie, The Northman, a Nordic fairy tale sort of movie that is very much for adults. And then the third movie is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the movie where Nick Cage plays himself. A very unique weekend where we get three original ideas all hitting theaters. It's not very often now where that's the case. I feel like a lot of times movies like these end up on Netflix or Amazon Prime just right out the gate. So it was kind of cool going to the theater to go see some of these. I went ahead and I saw The Northman and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and I enjoyed both of the movies. I think The Northman is something wholly unique, and there's truly nothing else like it out there right now. And then Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent I thought was just a really solid comedy movie. Unfortunately, neither really did big numbers in the box office. The Northman ended up making $12 million in its domestic debut, and I believe it's a little bit over $20 million worldwide on a $70 million budget. Obviously, that's not what you love to see right out the gate for a movie, so if I had to guess, they're probably going to take a loss initially on this film, but this is one where I could see a lot of people talking about in the future to where eventually the studio breaks even or makes some money off of it, but right now in its theatrical run, it's not looking too good. And then Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent made a little bit over $7 million in its 3-day opening weekend, and that is also not super great. Okay, and then I just looked it up. Its worldwide box office isn't really that great. I think it's just an extra $2 million, but something interesting that I want to touch on whenever I was just looking it up, the first, search item was Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent streaming. And just off the cuff, my first reaction to that is people are waiting for that movie to hit streaming. Clearly, people are just looking up where they can stream this movie because I guess they don't want to go out to the theater to go watch a comedy film. And that right there lies the problem with releasing a film like this that's more mid-budget comedy into theaters, because now people are so accustomed to waiting for a movie like that to hit streaming. They don't want to spend $14 or whatever theater prices are where you are to go see a movie like this. And a good comparison for this would be The Lost City that came out about a month ago as well. That movie has actually done pretty well financially, but it's not doing like crazy numbers by any means. Unfortunately, what I think this means is that movies like Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent just aren't going to get released into theaters as often. Obviously, you've heard a million other people talk about this, but I like to go by the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. It just didn't make a ton of money. And it's in its first week too, where it should be most profitable. But similar to The Northman, I think Unbearable Weight will be watched by a lot of people whenever it does initially hit streaming. It's just the problem is people didn't want to pay to go see it. The animated film called The Bad Guys actually ended up coming in first place in the box office this week. It ended up breaking in $24 million domestically, and so far worldwide it's made a little bit over $87 million on its $80 million budget. Obviously, it hasn't broken even yet whenever you factor in marketing costs, but if I had to venture to guess, by the end of its theatrical run, it will be a profitable movie. So I guess that's good for original animated movies. I guess just one thing to keep in mind is it didn't do crazy numbers. $24 million is relatively low given some of the debuts of recent movies in the box office. Good comparison would be Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which made over $70 million in its opening weekend. So this movie will be a win for the studio, but it isn't by any means a slam dunk. So all in all, in my opinion, this was kind of a mixed week for new releases. I mean, each of them I feel like did what was predicted of them. But not by any means something spectacular. I really do wish more people would go and see The Northman or The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent if they're interested, but that just doesn't seem to be the case right now. Again, I went and saw The Northman and Unbearable Weight, and I really enjoyed them. So if you're at all interested, I recommend you go see them. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is going to be a little bit less fun, and it's something that's been bugging me for a couple weeks. So as you all know, Morbius came out, and it was not received well by critics, not by any means, and audiences didn't like it either. And I'm included in that. There's no polite way to say it, I just straight up didn't like Morbius. It made a good amount of money in its opening weekend, but the biggest thing is its drop off into its second weekend. For context, usually a film has a good second week if their box office returns only drop 50 to 60%. That's generally considered good. Morbius dropped 70%. And now fast forward to this week, and it's dropped another 52%, and it is in the 9th slot in our domestic weekend box office. It's even behind The Lost City, which came out earlier than it. And if you really think about that, that's pretty crazy that a superhero film is not doing well box office wise. And I think it just goes to show that the audience is not as stupid as some studios think they are. And people talk, they're not going to go see a movie if it's bad. So far worldwide, it's made a little bit over $150 million off of its $80 million budget, not including marketing. But if I had to guess, Morbius is done. We are not seeing that character ever again on screen, at least not played by Jared Leto. And that's just because of the box office returns and the fact that it seems like nobody really liked it. I'm sure that there are people out there that liked it, and if you did, that's awesome for you. But a majority of people just didn't like it, and it showed in the box office return whenever nobody went and saw it after its opening weekend. And this leads into the next franchise that I have to mention here, unfortunately, Fantastic Beasts. The second week returns are back for Fantastic Beasts, and it dropped 66% week over week. In its initial opening weekend, it made $42 million. This previous weekend, it made $14 million, and so far worldwide, it's grossed about $280 million. And this is all off of I believe, $200 million budget, not including marketing. And on the surface, I'm sure you may be wondering why I'm even talking about it here, but I think all of those numbers look really bad whenever you put it into context. The Fantastic Beasts franchise has had continuously diminishing returns from the first one to the second one to now. The first movie made, I believe, a little bit over $800 million worldwide, really solid box office returns, and it was very well received by critics and audiences. The second one, not so much. It made $200 million less than the first Fantastic Beasts movie, and it was not very well received by critics or audiences. And now we're at the third movie, and it still didn't receive very good reviews from critics or audiences. It was looked at as an improvement for the second one, but still, it doesn't even have a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And now in its second week, people aren't showing up for a movie that takes place in the Wizarding World, a very popular IP. And on the surface, Fantastic Beasts beat The Northman at the 3 spot where The Northman was at 4, but if you actually look at the numbers, The Northman was in 1,000 less theaters and had a higher theater average than Fantastic Beasts. So at your average movie theater, more people went to go see The Northman than a Harry Potter related movie that was only in its second week. To me, that is tragic for that franchise. And if you were to ask me a week ago, I would have said, a fourth Fantastic Beasts movie is absolutely guaranteed. It's a really popular IP. Warner Brothers knows what they're doing. They are definitely going to make a next one. But now, I still think they're going to make a fourth one. I know they want to make 5 of them, but I don't think it's as set in stone. And maybe I'm just entirely wrong here, but the franchise has been doing increasingly poorly throughout its run. It's been getting diminishing returns. The last 2 have not been well received critically, or it at least has been divided on the last one. I personally didn't enjoy the third one, but that's just me. But increasingly diminishing returns, audiences are mixed, and people aren't going back to the theater, so they aren't buzzing about it. And it really bums me out because I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I don't want to see movies related to that world just come and go in the theater. I want them to be big events. And ultimately, I think what the returns are showing us now is that it's not enough to have a major IP just to throw it into theaters. You actually have to make it good. And this is honestly good for the audiences. It means that we're getting better movies from major IP, which, I mean, it's what we deserve. And for a long time, I feel like bad movies were making a profit simply because it had name brand value. But that's showing to not be the case anymore. Audiences have never had a wider array of creative material that they can consume. There's all sorts of stuff coming up on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO Max, every single week. So if you're a studio right now, you need to be paying attention and saying, we can't just pump out a Morbius movie and expect to make money anymore. It actually has to be a really great movie. And I know that there are actual people involved with the making of these, and I don't take it lightly talking about movies that I don't really like, so much respect to those filmmakers. I know people don't go out to actually make a bad movie. I just didn't enjoy them. I still hope that Fantastic Beasts gets a fourth one. I have faith in this franchise. Please, please, please make the next one good. Okay, what do you say we end this on a high note? I want to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a little indie movie produced on a $25 million budget that has been doing really well the last few weeks. It's not doing Marvel numbers by any means, but for context, I just talked about the percentage drop week over week for Morbius and Fantastic Beasts. This movie had an opening of, I'm seeing here, $6 million, and then the next week it actually went up by a little bit. Literally just by $100, but it went up, which is actually crazy. And so what this tells me is that positive word of mouth is really, really helping this movie. It is a really weird, really wacky, very creative, independent film that has excellent performances and I can honestly say is my favorite movie of the year so far. However, that is with the caveat that if you are not into super weird movies, it is not for you. But it really has a great family story told in a very weird, interesting way. I don't know how many times I've said weird, but that's really the best term I can use to describe this movie. Like I said, it hasn't been doing like Marvel movie numbers, but it's been doing really steady the last few weeks. And I love that for a smaller movie that didn't have the marketing budget of a Morbius or a Fantastic Beasts, it is doing well in its own right. So hopefully this means we get more movies like this put into theaters because audiences are showing with their dollars that they will show up in increasing numbers. So anyway, those are just a few of the things I wanted to talk about whenever it comes to the box office this week. Is there anything that stood out to you? Is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you really want to talk about? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more.